Welcome to Sarcasm and Serotonin. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Sarcasm and Serotonin. I'm your host, Joey Campbell, and with me today I have Jonathan Brown. Jonathan, you want to introduce yourself?
What's up, everybody? I'm Jonathan. I'm an alcoholic. Oh, wait, this isn't an AA meeting. Sorry.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted you to come in, to be honest. You have a pretty amazing story, man. And Brent and I were talking yesterday, kind of pumping this up a little bit. And Brent can't be here today. He has other commitments, but he would be. But one of the things that kind of struck me is that, you know, in the business we're in, and Jonathan works in the same industry that Brent and I work in, we often see people that have addiction issues, behavioral health issues, and other things that don't go and seek help. That's the norm. And you became an exception to the rule. So I'm going to kind of just turn it over to you and tell us what you want to talk about.
I guess we can kind of start with kind of what Joey's referencing there with me getting help, and then we can kind of go back to kind of the beginning. But kind of basically what happened is, this past year has been a year, but, I'm blessed in that I just celebrated 7 months of sobriety 2 days ago.
Outstanding, man.
Yeah, and but it really kind of came to a head in June of this past year. I was in a really dark place, and I've always had substance abuse and mental health issues my entire life. But I just kind of scraped by and kept scraping by. But it got to the point where, I really contemplated suicide every time I went home. And, it was just kind of, at that point, I knew it was this fork in the road. And one was the end, and one was getting treatment, because I could no longer live the way that I was living. And so I reached out and got some help. And, fortunately, I got put in contact with the right people, and I had the support of supervisors, and I got sent to this awesome place down in Florida, FHE Health in Deerfield Beach, Florida. They've got a really good program down there for guys like us, and I was able to go and get sober and work on some of this stuff in my head that's been there my entire life. But really going to treatment is one thing. This was my 4th time in a treatment program. The first 3 times was when I was still active duty Army, and the Army kind of made me go. And, but it's the work after treatment, right? It's like when they lock you in 4 walls, you got no other option. And but it's really been since coming home. I went to a sober living place for 4 months, and just having awesome supportive friends and coworkers, and that's why I've been able to kind of stay sober. And there's still a lot wrong in my life. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. But I'm finally in a place where I'm actually starting to enjoy life. And the big thing for me was kind of getting sober for that to start. But yeah, I'm the son of an alcoholic. My father is a functioning alcoholic, has been his whole life. And I thought I could get into the family business. Turns out you need a doctorate to be a pharmacist. So that was kind of off the table. And, but it's just kind of in those young, formidable years, I sought substances, and that's where I found where I like to have a good time. I think I tend to be a bit of an introvert, and substances just kind of made me the life of the party. Um, you know, but since getting into the line of work that we're in, it's like alcohol is accepted. It's like everybody can go to work and joke about, when they get off, they're going to go and get hammered.
Or what they did the night before, or their days off.
Exactly. And, I was in a bad place where I shouldn't be coming into work. I'm definitely dehydrated. I'm definitely not well rested. I'm a liability to people. And to be trusted to perform some of the things that we do in that state, it's scary to look back. But it's just widely accepted. And I, whether it's benzos or amphetamines or whatever, you can go to a doctor and you can get all these medications prescribed to you, and people think that it's okay because it's prescribed. Well, I've got a prescription. You're abusing the shit out of your prescription.
Yeah, and I've talked about, and I know, and some folks that had substance abuse issues before you came to work with us. It started because of a legitimate complaint, an injury, or something like that. And I'm going to put it frankly, Joey's opinion, that because there wasn't a treatment that could completely fix their problem, and they were in constant pain, a lot of doctors just make people into addicts. Constantly prescribing medications, and I get the comfort part. I get that, and I personally think for at least acute stuff like that, I think we undertreat a lot of pain, and I think the pendulum has swung way in the other direction now, where people with chronic pain and problems aren't getting the treatments they need as the result of we didn't know any better by doctors type thing. And they can blame all the pharmaceutical companies came in and pushed this drug on us, said it was safe, blah, 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 blah. Your name's still on the prescription. You're the responsible party. And I can name off the top of my head 4 people right now that we both know that situation occurred to them, and thank goodness they all came out the other side too. So it can be inadvertently done as well. Sometimes, we talk about mental health, behavioral health. I'm an introvert by nature as well. And which is funny. We're sitting here doing a podcast and I speak publicly for a living. So, but when I have Joey time, I'm really tied in, and it is really kind of interesting that you say the substances, whether it was alcohol, whether it was drugs, pills, whatever it was, makes you the life of the party. And when you said that, I got to thinking back on my younger years, and it's 100% right. It took me out of that, and I've always been an introvert. It took me out of that closed in space and allowed me to open up and be more free and be kind of the funny guy or the outrageous one or whatever. And it felt good. That was as much of a part of the euphoria of it as whatever alcohol and drugs do. And so I 100%, I think almost everybody goes through that, at least people with that introverted nature. they pass through that phase. What I would ask you is, what was there a time or a situation where you had the opportunity to kind of walk away from that when you were younger, or were you always kind of stuck in that?
I've probably had a lot of opportunities to kind of change. Um, you know, uh, I think I found alcohol and marijuana in middle school and growing up in Northern Virginia. Um, it was that's what we did. We went to school, Monday through Friday, and Friday night we're all meeting up at somebody's house. We're all sneaking out or whatever, and we're just gonna party. And so we would party for 2 nights, and because of that, my grades really took a hit. For some reason, I've kind of always been able to test well, but I didn't want to do the homework. I knew the information. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna smoke about it. I'm not doing homework. I already know this stuff. And so my grades took a big hit. And my parents, God bless them, the summer between my sophomore year and junior year, they said, we need to get you away from these friends of yours because you're not doing well in school. You're better than this. So we're going to move to South Carolina. And so we moved down here, and entering a high school in junior year was the hardest thing for me. Everybody's already clicked up. I'm an introvert.
Yeah, that doesn't help the situation at all. I would think, I know it sounds like your parents obviously had your best interest in mind, but like all parents, just like they made mistakes in kind of a way, not knowing. But that's a hard transitional time as a young person too. I worried just changing schools with my daughter, and it was when she was leaving elementary school and going to middle school. We changed that year, and I was really concerned about that drastic change. And it was just changing schools, not an entire part of another state where there's no really contact of your old life. So I can imagine what you were going through then at that point, that it was more isolation in a way.
It was, and that was around when MySpace was just starting up. Facebook was only for college kids then, and so talk about FOMO, and I'm on MySpace and all my friends are hanging out and I'm alone in South Carolina and don't know anybody. I can't really make friends. It's too late. I missed sign up for sports, so I'm not playing football, and so I just started skipping school because I would just drive to the beach. I would put on music and I would just drive. Sometimes I would just drive up 26, hop on I-95, head north, and I would kind of guesstimate, all right, it's been about 3 hours, time to turn around and head home. And so I just skipped school a bunch. And so I was going to get done in for truancy. But of course I found the stoners and the people that like substances because they're easy to find. I mean, you could.
Yeah, they kind of stick out. The more they hide, the more they are prevalent.
Oh yeah, I just followed the smell. I said, skunk. Okay,
Yeah.
that way. And so I'm in the same position. I'm not doing well in school because I'm not even attending school, and so failed opportunity for me to change my lifestyle. So then senior year, they put me in boarding school. So they sent me back to Virginia, and I went to a place called Youth for Tomorrow in Bristow, Virginia. It's owned by Joe Gibbs. He was the old Redskins coach, and
Okay. All right.
he's got a racing team in NASCAR, and he owns the place. He has something to. He started it up way back in the day, and most of the kids there are court ordered to be there, whether it's out of Maryland, D.C., or Virginia, and I think I was like one of 3 kids whose parents were paying for them to attend this school, and just a lot of kids, whether it's Grand Theft Auto, it's just kind of like this intervention program where it's like, instead of sending them to juvie and them just sit there and rot, we're going to send them to the school. There's drug testing, like there's staff that locks you in your room at night and does bed checks. And I did surprisingly well in that school. Like, I was the first one to take advanced placement college courses, graduated my senior year with a 4.0, but it's like, I needed that structure. I needed someone to say, sit down and do your damn work. That's all I needed. And so I did well, but of course, graduate, and because I did well, I ended up getting a scholarship through that school, and I got accepted to Charleston Southern University. And so I went for 2 weeks, and I attended 3 classes in that 2 weeks. And one of the classes I attended twice because there was a good-looking girl in there, and I just wanted to attend the second time to try to take her out on a date, which I did. But so I obviously dropped out of college, and so that was another failed opportunity for me to kind of get out of that lifestyle. And so I drop out of CSU. I'm driving home. It's not far. From CSU to my parents' house is, 10 minutes. And I said, well, man, this is 2007. I said, I can't show up at my parents' house and say, all right, don't be mad. I dropped out of college. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I dropped out of college. And I had a buddy who was joining the Marine Corps. And so I said, well, I'm going to stop by the recruiter's office. So I went to the recruiter's office, and a lot of them are in those strip malls, and you got like Air Force, Navy, Army, Marine Corps. Well, the Navy and Air Force must have been at lunch with each other or something. I don't know. They tend not to do a lot of work. And and the Marine Corps guy was out front and yelled at me, and I didn't want to get yelled at. So I went into the Army office and started the process of joining the Army. And I went home and I said, all right, don't be mad. I dropped out of college. And they were pissed.
Yeah.
I said, but don't worry, I joined the Army. And they were more mad about me joining the Army than me dropping out of college. I said, no, you don't have to do this, And, but looking back on it, I was 18, ADD and depression and substance abuse, I needed structure and discipline in my life. I needed someone to tell me what to do every moment of the day, or I'm going to get myself into trouble, because that's what Jonathan is really good at. And, so I joined the Army, and, man, if you have a problem with drinking, don't join the military. It's not going to go well for you.
Yeah, I've never heard a story that was in the military that didn't involve some kind of around alcohol, and it was, and I get it. A lot of these kids coming out of high school, they can kind of skirt the rules a little bit easier, and people of the same age and stuff like that, and it doesn't really help a situation like that very much at all.
I mean, it was great. I was getting paid every 2 weeks, and it was more money than I was ever making in my entire life. I had freedom. I had my own vehicle. As long as I showed up to PT formation at 6:30 in the morning, I wasn't in trouble. So there's a lot of mornings where we're showing up to PT formation, and we had just left River Street, and we're still drunk. I mean, it's just, that's kind of the lifestyle. But we had the excuse of we were gearing up to go to Iraq. And so it was, we need to party now. Like, we don't know what's going to happen over there. Afghanistan was popping off. We had an Iraq deployment coming up. But of course, in that lead up and that partying, one of the girls from Youth for Tomorrow, from that school, her and I started talking on Facebook while I had finished my basic training, and I was in Arizona at Fort Huachuca doing my job training. And so we were just kind of chatting. And so when I got to my first duty station, I've got money now. I can travel. I can put in leave. And so I went up and I visited her, and being 18 and having a good time, she ended up becoming pregnant, and like any young military member does, um, she doesn't have insurance, she doesn't have anything like that. We're gonna get married, so that's exactly what we did, and we got married. My son was born, and he was born end of November, and on Christmas Day, we deployed to Iraq. So I got 4 weeks with my newborn son, and then I left for Iraq. And you take two 18, 19-year-olds that one are way too young to be getting married to begin with. You throw a child in the mix, and then you say, all right, I'm sending one of you overseas for a year, and the other one, you're going to be a new mom, and y'all have fun and figure it out. Well, it doesn't go well. I take a lot of ownership because I probably wasn't doing the good husband thing, the good father thing. I probably wasn't video chatting enough. We're putting in long hours, and Iraq's just a whole nother beast and what it does to the psyche and all that stuff. And so we had our issues with our relationship, and there was some infidelity and stuff like that, and we tried to work through it, and things just kind of didn't work out. And they didn't work out in a really big way. And that was kind of, I ended up having like a mental breakdown, and that was the first time I got sent to treatment. Since that time, I guess that was about 12 years ago. Since that time, my son's in Virginia with his mom and his dad. Long story short, ended up signing over my legal rights. It's a mess. And those past 12 years are kind of what led me to this past June, and it's like there was more opportunities for me to change my lifestyle throughout there each time I went to treatment. And I was suicidal, and in 2012 the Army put me on Oxycontin for a year, and I formed an opiate addiction and overdosed twice while I was in the Army. Fortunately, since for the past 12 years I've been a degenerate, but I don't touch opiates. I learned my lesson the second time because I'm stubborn. But it's just, so for 12 years I've got this pain of not being in my son's life. And some of that is self-inflicted, and some of that I blame on the military. The Army's solution at the time when I'm, just got back from Iraq, unfaithful wife, son's not in his life, he's got depression, so what'd they do? Well, they threw me on 8 or 9 different psychiatric medications. I mean, max dose Effexor, max dose Abilify, max dose Seroquel, max dose Trazodone, Zoloft.
Oh, man.
They were making me take Antabuse because of my drinking. Like, really, really heavy, powerful, psychiatric meds that I'm already going through it. And it turned me into this zombie that didn't care. Like, I could have, I don't know, drove over a group of nuns through a crosswalk and hit the bumps and just kept going. I didn't care about anything. And I think that was really dangerous, what they were doing.
No, I agree. Not to take anything away, but I suffer from a couple different things, and I have been on medication for on and off most of my life. And my mom was really sick, bipolar, and watching all of that. And I've inherited a little bit of that from her. And I know some of the medications, and nothing like that, but even trying a different medication for, what the effect would be or something like that. I know I felt the same way where um, my biggest problem was always losing creativity because I think of myself as a creative person and trying to try something new, try find something different and things like that. And I would just find myself sitting in a chair, no motivation, things like that. And that was, just changing from this medication to this medication, and this one's has that effect. So, in a way, I do kind of see that, and I just can't imagine being on, this uh, sock drawer full of medications like that, and how that would affect you, and how not Jonathan Brown you were at that point. Because that stuff will, and I think it's necessary to properly treat people pharmacologically, but at a certain point, you know, you have to understand that removing someone's identity through that is not what they need. That's a band aid, and and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about behavioral health is that the answer to successfully navigating your behavioral health is straying away from band aids to find solutions to the root. And only then do you begin to see improvements and feel better and get better. You may always have to have that assistance, maybe with a medication or something like that. And, but you have got to get to that root problem to solve it. You just can't keep throwing something on top of it and covering it up. And a lot of people do that. And, I love the military. My dad was a military man. Um, and it's funny, he was his last few years, he was a master sergeant, and he did was over a bunch of recruiters. He did recruiting for a while and all of that stuff, and out processing and stuff. When we were, I remember him in the first Gulf War. He never had to deploy, but he had to go to Fort Jackson and out process. And so I don't want to take anything away from the military because my family has that history, and I never joined the military. Number one, I've never been physically fit enough to do it. Number two, and I probably could have gotten there. Number two, my dad told me, he said, I've spent enough time in here for both. He's a 30-year man. I spent enough time in here for both of us. That's something I don't want you to do. I want you to do something better. And so I honored that, which I thought was honorable of him. So I have a lot of respect. I still have his Class A sitting in the closet that's behind you. And but they do have that mentality of cover it up because we've only got to deal with him. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
my dog. For that next stint until he needs to sign back up again, and then we'll let him go. Yeah, we'll have to deal with him in the VA system, but we don't have to deal with him now. So let's get him to that point to get him out the door. And I think I hate to say it, but that's the reality of it when you really look at it, and it's unfair. It's unfair because nobody's sitting there asking what's causing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough ask to, you know, I think there's a lot of really good kids out there that do well in school, and whether their family was military or commercials just hit them right or movies or whatever, and they're squared away and they've got their shit together and they're like, I want to go serve my country. Hey, props to you. But the military also gets a lot of people that maybe grew up in a lifestyle, you know, whether it's fatherless home or abusive home or whatever it is, and they have nowhere else to turn. And so it's a good out for them. But you're bringing in a lot of people with a lot of trauma that they've never processed, and then you're going to start giving them money, and so it's a really rocky road, and so it's just kind of, it's going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's a numbers game, I think, you know.
Yeah, I can see that.
And the military took care of me, right? Other than the medication thing and demotion, which I'm not too happy about on my way out, but which was deserved. It's you know, all right, we're, you know, I was fortunate that I got sent to a warrior transition unit. I got put through a medical board, and so, you know, I got rated for my shoulder and my back and, you know, the space between my ears because I'm crazy. And so I got taken care of. There's a lot of veterans out there, especially from like the surge in Iraq and stuff like that in the early days of the GWAT, where those guys did their 4 or 6 years, and their, you know, ETS or end of service date came up, and they just got out. And there was no med board. There was nothing to document their injuries from combat. And they just got, you know, a boot in the ass and said, see ya, good luck with life.
Wow.
And I've got a lot of friends that are fighting this battle with the VA now, trying to get benefits that they, you know, these guys have seen some stuff, and just, they're beat up. And so them trying to have to fight that process it's tough for me to watch. And so I am very grateful in that the military took care of me, you know, but it's just tough, like, because everything that happened with the psychiatric meds, you know, since then, I shied away from medications. You know, I remember the day I got out, I went to my dad and I said, and I handed him my bag of pills, and I said, which ones do I need to wean off of, and which ones can I quit cold turkey? And he broke it down for me. And, you know, and so that's what I did. My first thing getting out of the military, you know, I think I went to like University of Phoenix online because I had the GI Bill and I could get some money that way. The Army was, you know, I'm medically retired, so I was kind of taken care of there. And I just did some odd jobs, but I just wanted to get off the medications. And so that's what I did. But then, you know, I smoked a lot of marijuana to get off the medications. And again, just Jonathan being an addict, if I like something, I'm going to do it until it ruins me. And so that's what I did. It was smoking a lot. It was drinking a lot. Gambling, because I never worked on the root issue, right?
Yeah.
I think that everyone thinks that I can go take this pill, or if I smoke this or whatever it is, that life's better. Well, no, you still have, you know, in my case, years of sexual trauma, combat trauma, you know, whatever you want to call the situation with my ex-wife and losing my kid. I mean, that's trauma. For me, it is.
Yeah,
You know?
no, 100%. It all stacks, and again, it's just like people don't think of behavioral health in the way they should a lot of times. And you said it, if you go get into a car wreck and you get injured, you go to a hospital, trauma center, or whatever, you have surgery, and they immediately go fix the root problem. Very rarely do they piss around to try to see if something just kind of fixes itself, and they definitely now just don't throw Band-Aids on the outside of it and hope for the best. But even today, in 2024 now, we absolutely don't do that in behavioral health care. We will always start at the very least invasive thing. And you know, there's got to be a compliance, there's got to be a want, there's got to be a desire to get better, obviously. But when somebody even makes that decision, I think it's not highly supportive in how that decision is treated medically or behaviorally by a lot of the professionals. And I don't think it's their fault. I think they just don't know the answers all the time. And so they're trying their best. So I'm not throwing shade at them at all. But, uh, you know, we have a trauma patient and they're bleeding. We go in and fix where they're bleeding. If we have a behavioral health patient and they are suffering from addiction, they're suffering from compound PTSD, which is exactly what most people that have whether it's sexual abuse or and then the trauma that we see through the military, we know that the trauma that we see in our jobs, the degeneration of society that we see, all of that just compounds, and you get this compound PTSD. They're not going in and just trying to fix that problem. They just want to, I don't want to say talk about it, but because you have to talk about it, that's a step in the process. But they're too quick to throw the Band-Aid on it, and we'll see how they do. And then nowadays, and I know this from a couple years ago. I was working through some stuff, and I was having a really hard time, and I became pretty. I've never been diagnosed with bipolar or manic depression, but I was definitely manic at the point, and I was in a pretty bad spot, and I reached out to several places. And because I didn't necessarily want everybody to know my business, and you get that from my position and all of that stuff. But, I'm in a situation where I felt like I was one step away from making a bad decision. Yeah, we can see you in 3 months. You need to go to your family doctor. That doesn't work.
Not at all.
That doesn't work. And then then that actually makes the problem worse because then nobody cares. That's in your mind. And one of the things that I've heard a lot of people talk about, and I kind of hate to say this, but Theo Vaughn. Theo is the man. He is the GOAT. He's one of the GOATs. And things like depression and things like that and behavioral health isn't necessarily that you feel alone. We have friends. People have friends you can call and talk to, or they'll just sit there. So you have people that are there for you, but you still have that loneliness feeling. And he said one time, depression isn't necessarily that people don't have their back. People don't have your back, but they just don't have you. They're willing to support, but they're not willing to be the person that just to sit there when you're going through a stage. And Brent and I talked on the last episode. Theo was doing a podcast, and it was, who was that guy? I can't remember now. I can't remember what his background necessarily was, but this guy broke down pretty to the point that he could not talk. And this is a pretty stoic fella. This is one of those folks that you don't see breaking down. And Theo did the most badass thing I've ever seen a human being do. And this is when he as a person came to that Mount Rushmore level for me. And he said, we don't have to talk. I can sit here with you. He had him. He didn't just have his back. He had him. And we, in the communities that we travel in, whether it's military, whether it's emergency services and things like that, we got a lot of people that's got our back, but most of them won't have you. And so that can be a lonely feeling when you get like that. what made me so interested in your story is I didn't know all of the background until today. But I always will pull for the underdog. It's just one of those things. I'll choose the team that you're supposed to lose. It just is that because maybe it's dopamine releases and stuff like that when they do win or whatever. But when I talked with one of the people that knew the story and just kind of got the 10,000-foot view of it, I knew you as a provider. I knew you as a person I worked with. I didn't see any of it. You know, I didn't work with you every day, obviously, but I didn't see any of it.
I don't think the guys on my crew saw it.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's, you know, to put it bluntly, sometimes that's a mark of an addict too, is that they can hide it so well.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side of it, it was not work performance. It wasn't things like that that were showing up negatively. It would have if things would have continued, obviously. But the ability to mask the symptoms, so to speak, is a trait that a lot of people with behavioral health have that is negative because they don't want people to find out. They don't want to think differently. And the fact is, now and today, the people that number one, I don't want to say don't care, but it doesn't affect their opinion of you one way or the other, what they know or what they don't know, and will support and be there and try their damnedest for you, far outweighs those people that are the suck it ups. That's just the way it is. And the fact is that those people that just say, people just need to suck it up, you know, that it's just part of life type of thing. Those are becoming dinosaurs and slowly going into extinction simply because of the ones of us that looks at them and says, you're stupid because you don't know. But it's interesting to note that it's so hard as a man to a dude. That's the big thing. You know, we think about behavioral health and things like that. We think of crazy people doing crazy stuff. You know, they dyed their hair, they went and done all of this radical stuff, and they act out abnormally. That's not the case. The majority of behavioral patients look just like you and me. And most people don't know. But what do you think? You know, you talked about having thoughts of suicide. What was the one thing, or what was the thing that kept you from making the wrong decision in that?
Bluntly, it was just, you know, it was my son, and then I also have a young daughter as well. In August, I had a daughter born, and you know, but there was also, you know, work being in the military and in the industry that we're in now. I have said it far too many times when somebody that I know has committed suicide and said, I wish I had known. Well, yeah, I mean, we're really good at putting this mask on.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that for a lot of years there has been this push about mental health awareness, and I think that, you know, companies and supervisors and owners have kind of, um, they've come out and said, we support mental health, and you need a mental health day, like take it, like. And I think COVID really exposed that we have a mental health crisis.
Oh yeah,
you
definitely.
know, and it's just kind of, um, but I think it's just kind of gotten to the point where now it's on individuals like myself and just other people who are kind of on the other side of this thing and see that life can really be enjoyable and are starting to do well. And again, like I said earlier, my life isn't great,
Well,
but
it's nobody's life's great. No, nothing is. There's not an idealistic life at all. It's how you manage the steps in life that define who you are, um, and knowing that there's alternative steps out there, I think, is kind of the big key for those that are struggling. Um, and again, it goes back to the the willingness of the individual. I can't remember the actual numbers, but the number 7 sticks in my head that someone that is a substance abuser, whether it's um, illicit drugs, prescription pills, or alcohol, uh, something it sticks in my head that it takes them an average of about 7 times of rehab or treatment to fully commit, and not necessarily saying that they will overcome it at that time, but it takes like the 7th time is the time they really truly try to commit to it. And that's 7 decisions you have to make in your head. And then you go back to, well, I've done this 3 times before, nobody's believing me, nobody's going to believe me. And then those people in the business of helping, how jaded have they gotten because they've seen the same people, and what are they actually doing? So it's really, and then just the fact, again, being just a guy in the world today where we have always been, in traditional roles of providers and protectors and things like that, do need help. And being able to say that, being able to humble yourself as a man to say it's time to fix something. I've lost too many people to suicide in my life. Um, and again, the question was, I wish I'd have known, or I never saw that coming type situation. It's not always in front of us.
and I think that was my big reason for kind of since coming back from treatment and now that I've kind of got my feet under me, 7 months of sobriety, doing well, therapy, all that fun stuff. Um, you know, I approached you about just kind of talking to everybody and just sharing a bit of my story because I can guarantee for a fact that there are other people going through similar situations within our company. Um, and it isn't obvious because, you know, the guys that I work with on a daily basis, they knew I was going through some stuff, but nobody understands the severity of it because I'm not talking about the severity of it,
Yeah.
and nobody's really going to be like, yeah, I go home and I stare at my rifle and I look at it like it's a take it out. Because you say something like that and you're going to get Baker acted and have fun in the psych ward. Um, you know, but having been down that road before, when I was in Florida, I did get Baker acted and forced to go to a psych ward. But I made a lot of really bad decisions down that road to where now I'm in a hospital, my wife took off, my son left, but now I've got all these odds stacked against me. And for some reason, when we get ourselves in a hole, we just keep on digging down.
Yep.
and and then you kind of reach this point where it seems insurmountable, the odds stacked against you, that now you've just kind of reinforced this reason to commit suicide or just keep making your life worse. And when I kind of found myself in that position, and I was making really bad decisions, fortunately I never got in trouble with the law. I never messed up at work, but that's not the right time to get help. You need to get help before you make your life worse. If you're going through something, you have a bit of a drinking problem, or your Adderall prescription's running out too soon, whatever it is, the time to get help is now. And I think that it's been such a blessing for me to be able to come back to work and be able to speak openly without fear of repercussion. And a lot of times when I do share with people, they're like, man, I had no clue. And I say, well, that's why I'm being open and honest about it, because if I can just help one other person,
Yeah.
I think that it's all worth it. And I just try to share that story of hope with everybody. I'm fortunate that I can share it as a provider with people that we run into. I wanted to touch on people being jaded and seeing the same thing over and over again. The fentanyl epidemic that's going on right now, and just opiates as a whole, it is tough as providers to keep going back to the same people, and I hear terrible comments, at other places that I worked before. It's just like, let's just take our time getting there. This will be the last time we have to deal with that person. Well, I am fortunate that someone saved my life.
Yeah.
Twice, right? And it's really, I get that, we're tired of running these calls or whatever it is. You're just tired of it. But we need to approach it with the same compassion, because we have an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life every single day. And it's just, I love my psychiatrics. I love my overdoses, because I get an opportunity to share and just talk to them a little bit. I love being able to do that.
And it's funny you say that. Yeah, I heard those same comments. And the fact is that it doesn't matter. And I've come to this conclusion that it doesn't matter if it's the first time or the 11th time we've been to this person. Maybe this is the time they make the right decision to move on and get better. The fact is that, yes, the good human being in us should be willing to share, willing to take that moment to maybe be that spark, maybe be that push they need. So we don't go back to them again, but we don't go back to them again because they were able to overcome their demon, and whatever that demon is. And I think that's what, as good human beings, we should be doing. Okay. We do get jaded. And it's kind of one of those things. Would you have if your community if you only had 100 people to deal with, and that's all you ever dealt with, the value of that life, I think, is more than 40, 50, 100,000 people. That some people see 1 million people. And when life becomes a commodity to you, as in general, then you need to reevaluate your situation, because you are the one that has as big a problem as the addict at that point. We should always, the ones that are healed should always be willing to help the ones that aren't. Whether you never had to be healed, but I'm using that pretty broad, but you should always be willing to help the ones that, and we're not going to win every one of them. Not going to win every one of them. But the ones we do become the story and become more powerful. Even such to the point, and I wanted to bring this up, with everything you had going on this year, we, and you were gone for a long time, you came back and still made a huge fucking difference. You and your partner were able to, well, did receive the most prestigious award that we can offer, as a result of y'all's actions. And so I look at it from that point of view, that your decision and everyone that helped you along your path played a part in saving someone else. And it goes back to your therapist, to whoever that was, the people in Florida, and everybody's helped you along the way. They all held a hand in that point of making a difference in that life. And just like that, without all of that, would that have been the same outcome? And I told Brent yesterday, and if you listen to the podcast when it comes out, I don't give praise out a whole lot. It's just it's a character flaw. I don't think about it. I tell people I'm just self-absorbed sometimes, but it's just a character flaw that I don't heap on praise a lot of times. But there's been few people that I've had the opportunity to work with that I was more proud of than you this year. And I wanted to tell you that because, number one, the courage you had to start the process of getting better and work continually 7 months now to improve, and every day is an improvement. Every day is further away from the old person. And but with all of that, you never faltered in anything you did professionally, and that is hard to do, man. That is hard to do. So I was almost like butterfly in my stomach proud of you. And I know the people that work with you, your crew and all, are also that proud too, because I've spoke with them. But going back, when you made that decision that it was time to get help, how difficult was it for you to approach that? How difficult was it for you to, I guess, reach out?
I mean, it was really probably like a 2-month long debate.
Really?
Oh, kind of war in my head of how long am I going to keep doing this, right? Because I settled into a nice routine of, get off work, play golf, and start drinking. And
Do you still play golf?
so I took a 5-month hiatus from golf. I just recently returned back to golfing because part of, A's big thing is you got to change people, places, and things. Well, I've changed a lot of people, places, and things.
Oh,
And it's no offense to people that were in my life before. I still love you, but it's just for me to truly nail the sobriety, I had to get out of that lifestyle. So I'm starting to enjoy golf again. But it was, start drinking or golf, which warming up included drinking. And so I would start drinking liquor at 10 in the morning. And with the help of my prescription, I would keep drinking until the next day at some point. And then it turned into that second day. Well, I need to drink so I don't feel sick, but I also need to start hydrating for work and and waking up every morning and being afraid to look at my phone. Who did I text? Who did I call? What did I do? Where was I last night? Is my vehicle in my driveway? Just degenerate stuff that, how long am I going to get away with this kind of thing? And just that self-hatred that, no amount of good that I did at work, it used to be when I got into this profession, it was kind of like, well, I help people at work. So when I'm off work, you know, I've got to even the scales.
Okay.
I'm allowed to be a degenerate and treat people poorly. Well, because one, I thought that they don't know what I've been through. You know, I deserve this. I deserve pain and suffering, and I didn't realize that I was hurting as many people as I was. But that realization started to happen more and more, that I was hurting a lot more people than ever hurt me. I was doing to others way worse than was ever done to me in my life. And then that's where the suicidal thoughts really started to creep in. But so it was kind of this 2-month process, because I knew about resources that I could reach out to. Whether it was going to be through the VA or the FAST team or all these different resources. Like, you want to find mental health support, you can find it.
It's out there now.
It's out there. Now, I will say it's a lot tougher for just kind of the lay person. Like, living in an Oxford house, a sober living house for 4 months, I did find that I hate using the term civilians, but a civilian addict trying to find a treatment program, it's really hard because they're full constantly. They don't have beds,
And the fact that one thing the ones that are state or federally funded, they're all full, and the ones that are privately funded are outrageous. I mean, like, people are. Why do we have to get rich off of everything? Everybody's problem, and I have a big issue with that. But yeah, they're either overcrowded already or unobtainable because of finances.
And a good addict doesn't have any money.
Correct.
Right? I'm going to spend it. And so I just kind of kept having this debate on, when is this going to end? When am I either going to pull the trigger, literally, or pick up that phone? Fortunately, I was at work one night, and I'm just kind of walking around, and these racing thoughts never stop in my head.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of going and going. And so I called and reached out to someone that we both know, and I said, I need help. And she didn't ask many questions, and she said, all right, somebody's going to call you in about 20 minutes. In 10 minutes, my phone rang, and this guy, Alex, he said, hey, man, can you get on a plane tomorrow morning? Whoa. Calm down. Like, I'm an alcoholic and addict. I need to plan my bender before I go to treatment. Like, I've got a golf tournament in 2 weeks. I did have some overtime lined up, and so I need to make some money. And I've got this golf tournament. And kind of that golf tournament turned into this is my last hurrah.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, they were going to have me on a plane in less than 12 hours to go get treatment. These people are good.
Yeah.
And, but, their big question, and, I went to supervisors and I said, hey, I've got to go out on FMLA, and they just said, you okay? You good? Right? Like, are you going to kill yourself? I said, I'm fine. I'm good, right? They didn't, it wasn't like random drug test
No, they
or,
were, and I think that's, the culture now is we don't have to know everything. And there's some things we just don't need to know at the time. And that's the way I look at it. And sometimes we just have to put the trust in the individual that they're doing the right thing. And I really like that. I think that's super. Sometimes that's all the support organizations can give, but it is important support because it releases it's one less thing to bother you and have to deal with type situation.
it was great. I mean, from the the time I made that phone call, I think it was about 6 days later, I had the conversation about, hey, I'm going out on FMLA, and I think I worked 2 or 3 more times. I wasn't treated any differently. They weren't peeking over my shoulder. It wasn't this, we can't trust this guy kind of thing. It was, you know, they expected me to do my job and show up to work, and that's what I had been doing all along, and I kept doing that. And then coming back was really nice in that I I came back, came to work. There was no like, re-entry interview or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's just I showed up, grabbed my stuff. It's time to go. And I had one question. It was, "You good?" That was it. I've never been looked at differently. There may be conversations going on behind the scenes, but I've never been treated differently. Um, and my big thing is I just want my performance to show that I'm doing well. And I've told all the guys that I work with on a daily basis, I said, hey man, you see something off with me, you think something's going on, check me. I love it when people check my shit. Like if I'm fucking up,
Fix me.
absolutely.
Let's straighten it out.
Absolutely, because me being an addict and alcoholic, I'm manipulative. If I think I can get away with something, I'm going to try. And
It's accountability, and that's what
absolutely.
a lot of recovery is what a lot of people would think excessive accountability, but it's not in reality. We probably, most of us, need more of that accountability in our, in our normal lives or normally in our lives. But yeah, it's just an accountability thing. It's okay to ask a question. And it's also okay to be asked the question and not be offended by it. You know what I mean? And that, some people say, oh, you're going to offend something. Yeah, probably so. But I would much rather let them know that I'm thinking about them or worried about them or they matter than, and be mad than we know nothing and then um, this person doesn't get the help they need, whatever that is, and it goes, to the other side that takes the other path, and whatever that other path ends up being. But I think it's real important for organizations as a whole to be supportive of behavioral health. I think it's, uh, everybody needs, I don't think there's a standard out there, but I think everybody needs to evaluate themselves as an individual and the organization as a whole to say, if you have a person that is struggling with addiction, alcoholism, or otherwise, how would we really manage that? You know, um, especially if they are actually wanting the help, because, um, it, be honest, I'm pretty attuned to, people. I watch people, and I would have never known all of this about you, just from what I had our engagements with each other. Um, and I'm not saying, but you were good at being an addict, and good addicts are good at being addicts, and that's something that organizations have to take into account now. is that when we talk about it, when we bring it up, when we discuss it, when we do, have, you know, sessions about it and stuff like that, um, allowing people to be able to take charge of their behavioral health is themselves without encumbrances that's kind of what organizations need to do, and be supportive. Just not placing um, obstacles in the path for an organization is great, and that would be a massive organizational change for a lot of places. But even so much so as to be supportive and be that, again, the day you left, nothing changed to the day you came back. There was not looking at anything any differently. Um, and that's amazing, and that's a testament to your crews and stuff like that you work with. Um, those are good people.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
I love them. They've truly become like family, and yeah, I just can't say enough good things about everyone that's been involved in this process. It's really just been so easy for me, and just really taking that work stress away from everything else that's going on, and just knowing that I have support here, man. And that's the tough thing. It's like addicts and alcoholics and people that are struggling with mental health. It's like, again, those odds that we stack against ourselves because we're making our life, we burn a lot of bridges, and we may not have support at home. We may be in financial hardship, legal trouble, all these other things that if you just have a rock that you can lean on, and they've been that, and I've got my rocks kind of set up throughout my life. At home, I have a really supportive person that checks my shit.
Good.
And she's a hard ass, and she's been great for me, my sponsor, and just all these different things that I have set up. And not to jump all the way back, but going back to, I started going to therapy when I got out as a part of my discharge plan. And for anybody that seeks therapy, it's really easy to set up this appointment, right? You can do the virtual stuff. I don't g-haw with, I'm not going to stare at my phone or a tablet and have a therapy session. I need to come sit in your office. It's decorated with all the smell goods and all that stuff.
The Zen stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And for about 2 months when I got out of treatment, I went to therapy, and I sat there and I talked about all the problems in my life. And next week I would show up and we'd talk about the same problems. And I did that for about 2 months. And I told her, I said, look, I said, I love being able to come and vent. This is great. I said, but I could come here for an hour a week for the rest of my life, and I could vent, no problem. But we're not getting to that root source. And so I had to approach, I think there was always talks of, we wanted to do some EMDR because I had already done some cognitive behavioral therapy. I've done prolonged exposure before. I'd never done EMDR. And
For people who don't know what EMDR is,
it's eye movement. I don't know what the DR stands for. But it's just kind of this, you can do it with taps on shoulders or lights, and it's something about connecting the left brain and the right brain when processing traumas.
okay.
And apparently it's supposed to work really great. But I just said, we need to start working on this root source, because none of these thoughts that I have about myself or insecurities or racing thoughts, none of those are ever going to go away unless we dig that stuff up and really start changing my core beliefs on these issues. And so that's what we did. So, I encourage anybody that's in therapy, if you think you're going to take a pill and your depression's going to go away, and you go to therapy for an hour and you just vent about your home life, you can do that and you might feel a little bit better, but there's 23 other hours in that day where I'm going to have these racing thoughts and I'm going to hate myself. So really work on it. Work on the shit.
That is, that's some of the best advice I've heard. I did therapy, and it became just, you go this week to vent about what went on last week type thing. And mine was, and I don't have a problem sharing it. I had a problem with when both my parents died a month apart. I had complex grief. I never grieved my father because my mother died, and I never grieved her because I was mad because, the whole thing. And I was mad that both of them died type thing. And so I had this complex grief, and I was completely isolated and a complete asshole to the world, more so than I am now. But I would just go in, and the only thing I would do was vent about everything everybody else was doing wrong in my life. And until the point I made that exact decision, that I looked down and was like, we're not fixing what's wrong with me. You know, and I remember the therapist looking at me. He said, "Yeah, we just been putting water in this broken radiator for it was 3 or 4 months now."
Yeah.
And finally we started working on the stuff that I didn't want to work on, because to me, with the grief component, if I was angry, if I was mad, if I was, and a lot of it was at them because they were gone. But if I was tortured about them, I would never forget them. And if I remained in a headspace where I tortured myself over that, and that I was unhappy, and that even the negative thoughts that I had with them, they were still thoughts and memories. And that was okay in my head. That was completely wrong when we started unpacking all of that stuff, and had to actually realize that my life with them was not that 6 months process, or that month process, that month going on, but the 6 months before that when they were both really sick. That wasn't the life with them. It was the 40 years before, or whatever. I can't, yeah, 40, 41 years before. When we started unpacking that, and then adding on the complicated PTSD issues that we in our jobs oftentimes see, unpacking a lot of that stuff, and then trying to not look at yourself as the bad person, as the undeserving person. I'm even to this day, I'll catch myself saying to a lot of people, I have trouble looking people in the eye a lot of times, because I don't feel like I'm worthy of most, of anything. And I don't know, and I hope it's just me being humble sometimes, but sometimes I know it's that thought, that intrusiveness. And but you're right. If I had to say without any hesitation whatsoever, if you to get the most out of what you're going to do to improve your behavioral health, you have to invest in uncovering the most uncomfortable stuff and get it out there. And I liken it to turning it over, getting the dirt off of it, letting the sun kill it, let the sun dry it out. It's always going to be a memory, but unpack it, understand it, and then learn techniques to manage your feelings towards it. And if you don't do that, you'll spend your entire life in therapy and never get better. And you will fall. You'll falter in other components if you're using, again, alcohol, if you're using drugs to lessen the impacts of those feelings and things like that. That recovery will suffer as a result of that as well. It's not, they're not mutually exclusive. It's all included together. And I just wanted to say, man, I am proud of you. I'm proud of what you've done. I'm proud of the fact that you're willing to talk about it. And I am making this I'm making this, kind of throwing it out there, that this won't be the last time we see you here.
I hope so.
Simply because I think we got a lot more to talk about. But I want to definitely keep this aware. Next time we'll have it'll be a little bit lighter. We'll have some stuff to go over. Brent will be in here and things like that. But man, I appreciate you coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Joey.
If you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can find us on our social media at Sarcasm and Serotonin, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as at Sarcasm and Serotonin. The podcasts are available, of course, on Spotify, Apple, Google, and iHeartRadio. And you can just search Sarcasm and Serotonin. That's and as A-N-D, spell it out. But if you have any questions or comments for myself or Jonathan, email me at sarcasmandserotonin@gmail.com. If you have a question for Jonathan, I will get it to him. I know where he works. I know where he's going to be at, and we will respond back to you. But please send that stuff out there, and we will be more than happy to address you with it. But we have gone, Jonathan, would you believe, an hour and 20 minutes?
Yikes. Sorry for keeping you so long, Joey.
No. But, I was telling you before, it just gets organic and you start moving. Time fades away. I think we got a lot more to talk about.
100%.
We'll save that to another episode.
Hell yeah.
Thank you, folks, for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in for another episode of Sarcasm and Serotonin next week. We love you. We'll see you later.